The gunshot echoed across the plains, startling Beatrice Whitaker as she clung to the stagecoach seat, one hand pressed protectively against her swollen belly. Wyoming Territory, 1873, was no place for a woman alone, especially not one 5 months with child and desperate for a fresh start. "Hold on, folks. Bandits!" the driver shouted as the coach lurched violently, sending Beatrice's few possessions tumbling to the floor. Her heart pounded in her chest as she heard hoofbeats approaching. This wasn't how her journey to Hays City, Kansas, was supposed to unfold. The advertisement for a housekeeper position had been her salvation after her husband's death, her only hope for survival. Now, with outlaws surrounding the stagecoach, that hope seemed to be slipping away. The coach came to an abrupt halt, dust billowing through the windows. A gruff voice demanded valuables from the other passengers. Beatrice clutched her worn leather purse containing her meager savings and the folded newspaper advertisement that had brought her here. "Please," she whispered, "not now." The door flew open. Beatrice blinked through the dust at the masked figure pointing a revolver into the coach. "Well, well," the bandit drawled, eyes fixing on her rounded belly. "Looks like we got ourselves a shot rang out and the bandit crumpled. More gunfire erupted." Beatrice pressed herself into the corner, arms wrapped around her unborn child. Moments later, a different face appeared at the door unmasked, weathered by sun and wind, with kind eyes that contrasted sharply with the grim set of his mouth. "Madam," he said, extending a calloused hand. "Name's Preston Xavier. Seems you folks could use some assistance." Beatrice hesitated, then placed her trembling hand in his. As he helped her from the coach, she saw 3 bandits face down in the dust and 2 riders keeping watch. "Thank you," she managed. "Headed to Hays City?" Preston asked, noticing the paper clutched in her hand. Beatrice nodded. "I have a position waiting. As luck would have it, so am I. My ranch is just outside town." As the driver repaired a broken wheel, Preston kept a respectful distance but a watchful eye. When Beatrice swayed slightly in the heat, he was at her side instantly, offering his canteen. "Forgive me for asking, madam, but are you well enough for travel?" Beatrice straightened her spine. "I haven't much choice, Mr. Xavier." His eyes softened with understanding. "No, I don't suppose you do." Little did Beatrice know that this chance encounter on the dusty Kansas plains would change both their lives forever. The position awaiting her was at the Xavier Ranch, and Preston Xavier, the solitary cowboy who just saved her life, was about to become far more than her employer. The stagecoach arrived in Hays City by late afternoon. The town bustled with activity, cowboys fresh off the trail spending their earnings, merchants hawking wares, and ladies in fine dresses strolling the boardwalks. It was a far cry from the small Pennsylvania town Beatrice had left behind. "The Xavier Ranch is 5 miles north," Preston explained as he helped her down. "I'll have my foreman bring the wagon round for you." "Thank you, but I should speak with Mr. Xavier first," Beatrice said, smoothing her travel-worn dress. The advertisement said to inquire at Wilson's General Store. A flash of amusement crossed Preston's face. "Madam, I am Mr. Xavier, Preston Xavier. The advertisement was mine." Beatrice felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Oh, I hadn't realized." "Most don't expect the ranch owner to be riding escort for the stagecoach," he said with a small smile. "I was in Dodge City on business. Lucky timing, I suppose." Lucky indeed, Beatrice thought, remembering the bandits. Preston's expression grew serious. "Mrs. Whitaker, Beatrice Whitaker." "Mrs. Whitaker, I should mention that when I placed that advertisement I wasn't expecting." His eyes flicked momentarily to her midsection. Beatrice's heart sank. She'd feared this moment from the start. I understand if you wish to find someone else. I didn't mention my condition in my response because I feared you wouldn't consider me, but I assure you I'm capable, and Preston held up a hand. I'm not retracting the offer. I just want to be sure you understand what you're getting into. The ranch is isolated. The work is demanding. There's no doctor nearby. Relief washed over Beatrice. Mr. Xavier, I've been caring for myself these past months. I'm stronger than I look. Preston studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I believe you are. Wait here while I fetch the wagon. As he walked away, Beatrice released a shaky breath. She had secured the position for now, but she wondered if Preston Xavier would still want her services once her child arrived. She had nowhere else to go, no family to turn to. This opportunity was her last hope. Preston returned with a wagon driven by an older man with a silver mustache. "This is Hank, my foreman," Preston said as he helped Beatrice onto the seat. "He's been with me since I bought the ranch." "Pleasure, madam," Hank said with a tip of his hat. "Boss says you're our new housekeeper." "About time, too. Place has been a right mess since Mrs. Hodges left." The ride to the ranch was uncomfortable on Beatrice's already aching back, but the scenery distracted her from the discomfort. Rolling plains stretched to distant mountains, cattle dotted the landscape, and the setting sun painted everything in gold. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Preston, riding alongside on his horse, nodded. "Most beautiful country I've ever seen. Worth every hardship." When they crested a hill, Beatrice saw the ranch spread below a sturdy two-story house with a wide porch, several outbuildings, corrals with horses, and a bunkhouse where she assumed the ranch hands stayed. "Home sweet home," Hank announced. "Home." The word made Beatrice's chest tighten. She hadn't had a true home since Thomas died 7 months ago. Their small rented rooms had been quickly reclaimed by the landlord when she couldn't pay. Preston dismounted and helped her down from the wagon. "I'll show you to your quarters," he said, carrying her small trunk with ease. The interior of the house was spacious but neglected. Dust covered most surfaces, dishes were piled in the kitchen sink, and boots and papers were scattered about. "Been managing on my own," Preston said, noticing her assessment. "Not very well, as you can see." He led her to a pleasant room off the kitchen with a comfortable bed, dresser, and window overlooking a small garden gone wild with weeds. This was Mrs. Hodges' room. She was with us for years before moving to Denver to live with her daughter. "It's lovely," Beatrice said sincerely. It was larger than any room she'd had since childhood. "The water pump is in the kitchen. Outhouse is out back. You'll have Sundays to yourself, and I expect 3 meals daily for me and any hands working close to the house. Usually just Hank and 1 or 2 others." "What about laundry, mending, cleaning?" Beatrice asked practically. "Whatever you can manage," Preston said. "I understand your condition will limit things." Beatrice straightened. "I assure you, Mr. Xavier, my condition won't prevent me from earning my keep." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I don't doubt your determination, Mrs. Whitaker. Rest tonight. You can start fresh tomorrow." After Preston left, Beatrice unpacked her meager belongings: 2 dresses, undergarments, a hairbrush, and a small photograph of Thomas in a tarnished frame. She placed it on the dresser, touching his face briefly. "We made it, Thomas," she whispered. "We found a place for our child." Her stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten since morning. The kitchen intimidated her in its disorder, but she found bread, cheese, and apples that were still good. As she ate at the large table, she made mental lists of what needed doing first. A knock startled her. Preston stood in the doorway, looking almost sheepish. "I realized I hadn't offered you supper." "I found something, thank you," he nodded awkwardly. "There's a basin and some water heating by the stove if you'd like to wash up." "That's very thoughtful. Another nod, and he turned to leave. "Mr. Xavier," Beatrice called after him. "I want to thank you again. Not many would hire a woman in my situation." Preston paused without turning. "Everyone deserves a chance, Mrs. Whitaker." Then he was gone, boots echoing on the wooden floors. Later, as Beatrice lay in the unfamiliar bed, hand resting on her belly where her baby kicked vigorously, she wondered about her taciturn employer. There was kindness in him, but also a guardedness she recognized. Preston Xavier was a man who kept his distance from others. She understood that all too well. "We'll be all right," she whispered to her unborn child. "We'll work hard and make our way." She had no idea then how entwined her way would become with Preston Xavier's, or how his solitary existence was about to be forever altered by her presence. Morning came early on the ranch. Beatrice woke to roosters crowing and the distant sounds of men preparing for the day's work. She dressed quickly in her least worn dress, pinning her hair in a simple bun. Her back ached from the journey, but she pushed the discomfort aside. The kitchen was empty when she entered. The stove was cold, but someone had left coffee grounds and a pot of water ready. She stoked the fire, set the coffee to brew, and assessed her surroundings. The pantry was reasonably stocked, though disorganized. She found flour, bacon, eggs, and potatoes enough for a proper breakfast. By the time Preston entered the kitchen, she had a hearty meal prepared and the table set. He stopped short, seemingly surprised. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitaker. You've been busy." "Good morning, Mr. Xavier." "I hope you're hungry." His eyes took in the spread crisp bacon, fried potatoes, fluffy scrambled eggs, and biscuits. "Starving, actually." He removed his hat and hung it on a peg by the door before washing his hands at the pump. Beatrice poured him coffee as he sat down. "Will your men be coming in for breakfast?" "Just Hank today. The others eat at the bunkhouse." As if summoned, the foreman appeared, his weathered face brightening at the sight of food. "Well now, this is a welcome change. Morning, Mrs. Whitaker." "Good morning, Mr. Hank." "Just Hank, madam." No Mr. needed. The men ate with enthusiasm, and Beatrice felt a small surge of pride. It had been months since she'd cooked for anyone but herself. "What brought you to Kansas, Mrs. Whitaker?" Hank asked conversationally. Beatrice hesitated. "My husband died last winter. Influenza." "I needed work, and your advertisement seemed providential." "Sorry for your loss, madam," Hank said sincerely. Preston's expression revealed nothing, but his eyes met hers briefly. "The work will be steady here, if not exciting." "Steady suits me fine, Mr. Xavier." After breakfast, the men left for their duties, and Beatrice began the enormous task of bringing order to the house. She started with the kitchen, scrubbing every surface until it gleamed. Next came the main living areas, sweeping, dusting, and organizing. By midday, she was exhausted but satisfied with her progress. She prepared a simple lunch of sandwiches and left them covered for the men, then allowed herself a brief rest on the porch, where the spring breeze offered relief from the warm house. The ranch sprawled before her, a working cattle operation with several cowboys moving about their tasks. In the nearest corral, Preston was training a young horse, his movements confident and gentle. Beatrice found herself watching him, admiring the way he communicated with the animal. Her baby kicked sharply and she placed a hand on her belly. "Yes, I see him too," she murmured. "He's good with horses." After her rest, Beatrice returned to her work. She was in the midst of organizing the pantry when Preston returned for lunch. "You didn't have to do all this," he said, gesturing to the now clean kitchen. "It's what you hired me for," Beatrice replied. "Yes, but—" He seemed at a loss. "You should pace yourself." Beatrice understood his concern but bristled slightly. "I know my limits, Mr. Xavier." He nodded, conceding the point. "The house hasn't been this clean since. Well, in a long time, thank you. The simple gratitude warmed her more than it should have. You're welcome. That evening, after serving a dinner of beef stew and cornbread that earned her more appreciation from Preston and Hank, Beatrice finally retired to her room. Her feet were swollen, her back ached fiercely, and exhaustion weighed on her like a heavy blanket. But she'd proven herself useful, essential, even. It was more than she dared hope for. The following days established a routine. Beatrice rose early to prepare breakfast, cleaned and organized during the day, and had dinner ready by sunset. Preston was often away from the house, busy with ranch work, but they shared meals in mostly comfortable silence, occasionally broken by Hank's friendly chatter. A week into her employment, Beatrice was hanging laundry when she noticed Preston watching her from the corral. "Is something wrong, Mr. Xavier?" she called. He approached, looking troubled. "Mrs. Whitaker, I've been thinking. There's a lot of work here, too much for one person, especially in your condition." Beatrice's stomach dropped. Was he dismissing her already? "I've kept up with everything you've asked," she said defensively. "That's just it. You're doing too much." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of discomfort. "I'd like to hire a girl from town to help a few days a week, just until—" His eyes flicked to her belly. Relief flooded her. "Oh, that's very considerate but unnecessary. I'm perfectly capable. It's not up for discussion," Preston interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. "I've already spoken with Lily Stevens. She's 16, needs the work, and will be here tomorrow." Beatrice wanted to protest further but recognized the wisdom in his decision. Her pregnancy was advancing and some tasks were becoming difficult. "As you wish, Mr. Xavier." He nodded, seemingly relieved she hadn't argued. "And another thing, I think it's time you called me Preston." "Mr. Xavier makes me feel like my father." The request surprised her. "Then you must call me Beatrice." A small smile touched his lips. "Beatrice." The way he said her name sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Thank you for not fighting me on this. You're my employer." "It's not my place to fight you on anything." Something flickered in his eyes, disappointment. "Is that how you see me? Just an employer?" The question caught her off guard. What else could he be? "We've only just met, Mr. Preston." He nodded, his expression closing off again. "Of course. I'll be in the north pasture if you need anything." As he walked away, Beatrice wondered what had prompted his question. Since arriving at the Xavier Ranch, she'd thought of little beyond survival, keeping her position, preparing for her child, building a modest future. She hadn't considered that Preston might see her as anything but a convenient solution to his domestic problems. The next day, Lily Stevens arrived, a cheerful, freckle-faced girl eager to earn money for her family. Beatrice found her to be a capable helper and pleasant company. With Lily handling the heavier cleaning and laundry 2 days a week, Beatrice could focus on cooking and organizing the house to her satisfaction. By the end of her second week, the Xavier Ranch house had been transformed. Surfaces gleamed, curtains hung freshly washed at the windows, and meals appeared like clockwork. Preston said little about the changes, but Beatrice sometimes caught him looking around with an expression of wonder, as if he'd forgotten what his home could be. One evening, as Beatrice knelt in the neglected garden, attempting to salvage some vegetable plants from the encroaching weeds, Preston appeared beside her. "You shouldn't be on your knees in your condition," he said, offering a hand to help her up. Beatrice accepted his help, trying to rise gracefully despite her growing belly. The tomato plants needed attention. "I can hire someone for the garden too." She shook her head. "The garden is a pleasure, not a chore. Besides, my grandmother always said working with growing things was good for expectant mothers." Preston's eyes softened. "When is your child due?" "August, I believe. Perhaps early September." He nodded thoughtfully. Have you considered what will happen after? The question she'd been dreading. I hoped. That is, I assumed I would continue working here if you're satisfied with my service. With a newborn, women have worked with babies since the beginning of time, Beatrice said, trying to keep the desperation from her voice. I can manage. Preston studied her face. You have no family to return to. No. My parents died years ago. I have a brother somewhere in California, but we haven't spoken in years. And your husband's family? Beatrice looked away. They made it clear they couldn't support us even before Thomas died. Preston's jaw tightened. I see. If you prefer I find other arrangements after the baby comes, I understand, Beatrice said, though the thought filled her with dread. That's not what I meant. Preston ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of discomfort. I meant only to understand your situation better. Your position here is secure, Beatrice, with or without a child. Relief washed over her so strongly that tears pricked at her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. Thank you, Preston nodded, seeming uncomfortable with her emotion. There's something else. I'll be riding to Hayes City tomorrow for supplies. Is there anything you need? The question surprised her. Perhaps some sewing supplies, and if there's a lending library. Write a list, he said. And yes, there's a small library. I'll bring you something to read. Such a simple kindness, but it touched Beatrice deeply. That would be wonderful. As Preston walked away, Beatrice felt something shift between them, a tentative bridge forming over the employer-employee divide. She reminded herself not to read too much into his kindness. Preston Xavier was a decent man who treated those who worked for him well. Nothing more. But that night, as she lay in bed feeling her baby tumble within her, Beatrice found herself thinking of Preston's eyes when he'd asked if she saw him as only an employer. There had been something there, something that made her wonder if he was as alone in this world as she was. The following day, with Preston gone to town, Beatrice tackled his office, a room she'd avoided thus far, respecting his privacy. But the dust was becoming noticeable, and she reasoned that tidying wouldn't constitute prying. The office revealed more of Preston than the rest of the house. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with volumes on ranching, horses, and, surprisingly, poetry. The desk was cluttered with ledgers and correspondence. A framed photograph caught her eye, a younger Preston standing beside an older couple she assumed were his parents and a young woman who shared his features, likely a sister. As Beatrice dusted the frame, she noticed another photograph partially hidden behind ranch papers. This one showed Preston with his arm around a beautiful dark-haired woman. They were both smiling, looking into each other's eyes with evident affection. A wife. He'd never mentioned being married. What are you doing? Beatrice jumped, nearly dropping the photograph. Preston stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry, she said quickly, replacing the photo. I was only dusting. Preston entered the room, placing a package on the desk. It's fine. I should have expected you'd clean in here eventually. Was that your wife? Beatrice asked before she could stop herself. His expression darkened. She was to be. The past tense told her everything. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked, Preston sighed, seeming to deflate. Her name was Claire. She died of fever 3 years ago, a month before our wedding. That's terrible, Beatrice said softly, understanding now the shadows she sometimes saw in his eyes. It was. Preston glanced at the photo, then deliberately turned away. I brought you these. He handed her the package. Inside, Beatrice found an assortment of sewing supplies, needles, thread, scissors, and even some soft flannel fabric. Beneath these treasures were 3 books, a novel by Charles Dickens, a volume of poetry, and a practical guide to infant care. Preston, this is too generous, she protested. He shrugged. The ranch is profitable. A few books and sewing notions won't bankrupt me. Still, thank you. It's been months since I've had anything new to read." For a moment they stood in awkward silence. Then Preston cleared his throat. "I should get these supplies unloaded." After he left, Beatrice remained in the office, thinking about what she'd learned. Preston had loved and lost, just as she had. Perhaps that explained his solitary nature, his reluctance to form connections. She understood that all too well. That evening, after dinner was cleared away, Preston surprised her by lingering at the table rather than retreating to his office as usual. "May I ask you something, Beatrice?" She nodded, curious. "How did you meet your husband?" The question was unexpected, but not unwelcome. "We grew up in the same Pennsylvania town. Thomas worked at the textile mill with my father. He was always kind to me, even when we were children." She smiled at the memory. "He asked me to marry him the day after my 18th birthday, said he'd been waiting years for me to be old enough." "You loved him." "I did, very much." Beatrice's hand drifted to her belly. "This child was a blessing we'd waited 2 years for." Preston nodded thoughtfully. "And what brought you west? Most widows would stay where they had connections." Beatrice hesitated. There was more to the story than she'd shared, painful truths she rarely spoke of. But something in Preston's steady gaze encouraged honesty. "After Thomas died, I discovered we were in debt. The doctor's bills, the funeral. I had to sell everything just to pay what was owed. Then I learned I was with child." She took a steadying breath. "Thomas's family made it clear they wouldn't help. My parents were gone, my brother unreachable. The mill was laying off workers, not hiring. I saw your advertisement and thought, a fresh start, far from those who knew my circumstances." "You were brave to come," Preston said quietly, "traveling alone in your condition." "Desperate, more like," Beatrice admitted. "But yes, it took courage I didn't know I had." Preston's eyes held hers. "You have more strength than you realize, Beatrice Whitaker." The compliment warmed her. "Thank you." "For what it's worth," he added, "I'm glad you answered my advertisement. The house hasn't felt this much like a home since." He trailed off, but she understood. Since Claire, he meant. Since the future he'd planned had crumbled. "I'm glad too," Beatrice said softly. That night marked a shift in their relationship. Preston began spending evenings in the main room while Beatrice sewed baby clothes from the flannel he'd brought. Sometimes they talked about books, about the ranch, about their lives before. Other times they sat in comfortable silence, each lost in their own thoughts but taking comfort in the other's presence. As spring gave way to summer, Beatrice's pregnancy advanced. Her dresses grew tight, and her movements slowed. Preston watched her with increasingly concerned eyes, often stepping in to lift something she was reaching for or sending Lily to help with tasks he deemed too strenuous. "You're hovering, Preston," Beatrice told him one hot July afternoon when he insisted on carrying a basket of vegetables she'd harvested from the now thriving garden. "I'm being sensible," he countered. "Doc Miller says you should be resting more." The local doctor had begun stopping by the ranch regularly, ostensibly to check on an injured ranch hand, but always finding time to examine Beatrice as well. She suspected Preston had arranged this, though he never admitted it. "I'm perfectly healthy," she insisted. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. And dying in childbirth just as long," Preston said, his expression darkening. "Just humor me, Beatrice." She relented, recognizing the fear behind his concern. "Very well, but I'm not an invalid yet." July brought scorching heat that made the house unbearable by midday. Preston moved a comfortable chair to the shaded porch for Beatrice, insisting she rest there during the hottest hours. She found herself dozing one afternoon, a half-finished baby gown in her lap, when voices woke her. "She's good for you, Preston," Hank was saying somewhere nearby. "Haven't seen you this alive in years." "She works for me, Hank, that's all." "Is it? You watch her like a man watches treasure." "She's carrying a child alone in the world. Anyone would be concerned." Hank's chuckle was knowing. "Concern doesn't explain the way you look at her when you think no one's watching." "That's enough, Hank. I'm just saying, boss, life's too short to deny yourself happiness when it's right in front of you." Her husband's barely cold in his grave. Been 7, 8 months from what she said, and she's building a new life. Might want someone to share it with. "Drop it, Hank, please." Beatrice kept her eyes closed as footsteps approached, pretending to sleep as someone Preston surely paused near her chair. She felt something light settle over her, a thin blanket to shield her from the occasional breeze. Then, so softly she almost missed it, a gentle touch brushed her hair back from her face. Her heart quickened, but she maintained her steady breathing until the footsteps retreated. When she opened her eyes, she was alone on the porch, a light cotton throw covering her legs. Hank's words echoed in her mind. "You watch her like a man watches treasure." Could it be true? Had Preston developed feelings for her beyond employer and employee? More unsettling, had she developed feelings for him? Beatrice placed a hand on her swollen belly, feeling her child move beneath her palm. She had come to Kansas seeking safety and stability, not romance. Her heart still ached for Thomas, for the future they'd planned together. And yet Preston's quiet strength had become a comfort to her. His rare smiles brightened her days. She found herself looking forward to their evening conversations, to the moments when his guard dropped and she glimpsed the man behind the reserved rancher. "What would your father think?" she whispered to her unborn child. "Would he understand if my heart began to heal?" No answer came, of course, but the baby kicked vigorously, as if in response. That evening, Preston didn't join her in the main room as had become their custom. He ate dinner quickly and retreated to his office, citing ranch business that needed attention. Beatrice told herself she wasn't disappointed, but the lie rang hollow even in her own mind. The next morning brought a change in the weather, dark clouds and a hint of rain that promised relief from the heat. Beatrice was preparing breakfast when a sharp pain lanced through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the edge of the stove for support. "Beatrice." Preston appeared in the doorway, alarm crossing his features when he saw her distress. "What's wrong?" "Just a pain," she managed, straightening as it subsided. "It's past now." Preston crossed the room in quick strides. "Sit down. I'll fetch Doc Miller." "That's not necessary." It was only... Another pain cut off her words, this one stronger than the first. Preston's face paled. "It's too early. 5 weeks," Beatrice whispered, fear gripping her heart. "The baby shouldn't come for 5 more weeks." Without hesitation, Preston scooped her into his arms, carrying her toward her bedroom. "Hank," he bellowed. "Ride for Doc Miller, now." The next hours passed in a blur of pain and fear for Beatrice. The doctor arrived quickly, his expression grave as he examined her. "The baby's coming," he confirmed. "Nothing to do but help it along." "But it's too early," Beatrice protested, tears streaming down her face. "Will my baby survive?" Doc Miller's kind eyes held no false promises. "Many babies born early do just fine, Mrs. Whitaker. We'll do everything we can." Preston refused to leave, despite the doctor's suggestions that childbirth was no place for a man. He stationed himself by Beatrice's head, holding her hand and wiping her brow with a cool cloth as her labor progressed. "You should go," she told him during a brief respite between contractions. "This isn't your burden." His hand tightened on hers. "I'm not going anywhere, Beatrice." "Why?" she asked, searching his face. "Why do you care so much?" Before he could answer, another contraction seized her, more powerful than any before. She cried out, gripping his hand with surprising strength. "It's time to push, Mrs. Whitaker," Doc Miller announced. What followed was the most excruciating experience of Beatrice's life. She pushed when told, rested when permitted, and prayed continuously for her child's survival. Through it all, Preston remained steadfast, his presence an anchor in the storm of pain and fear. After what seemed an eternity, a tiny, angry cry filled the room. Beatrice collapsed against the pillows, exhausted but desperate to see her baby. "A boy," Doc Miller announced, quickly wrapping the infant in a clean blanket. "Small, but he's got good lungs." He placed the tiny bundle in Beatrice's arms. Her son was indeed small, with a shock of dark hair and red, wrinkled features. But his eyes, when they briefly opened, were alert, and his cry was strong. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears of joy and relief streaming down her face. "You're early, but you're perfect." Preston stood beside the bed, his expression a mix of awe and something deeper as he gazed at the mother and child. "He's beautiful, Beatrice. Would you like to hold him?" she asked impulsively. Surprise flickered across Preston's face, followed by hesitation. "I wouldn't know how." "Support his head," Beatrice instructed, carefully transferring her son to Preston's arms. The sight of the strong, capable rancher cradling her tiny infant with such gentle care made Beatrice's heart swell with emotion. Preston looked down at the baby with wonder, as if holding something precious beyond measure. "What will you name him?" he asked softly. Beatrice had considered many names during her pregnancy, but in this moment only one felt right. "Thomas, after his father. Thomas Preston Whitaker." Preston's eyes shot to hers, questioning. "If you don't mind," she added. "You've done so much for us." "I'm honored," Preston said, his voice rough with emotion. "More than you know." Doc Miller, who had been quietly cleaning up, cleared his throat. "The little fellow seems healthy despite his early arrival, but he'll need special care. Keep him warm, feed him often, and call me if he shows any signs of distress." Preston carefully returned the baby to Beatrice's arms. "He'll have everything he needs," he promised. "Both of you will." The doctor nodded approvingly. "Mrs. Whitaker needs rest now, and you, Preston, look like you could use some yourself." Preston reluctantly withdrew, promising to check on her soon. When he was gone, Doc Miller gave Beatrice a knowing look. "That man cares for you, Mrs. Whitaker." More than an employer should. Beatrice felt her cheeks warm. "He's been very kind. Kindness doesn't explain the way he looked at you or that baby." The doctor patted her hand. "Just an observation from an old man who's seen a lot of life." After he left, Beatrice gazed down at her sleeping son, marveling at his tiny features. "Your father would have loved you so much," she whispered, "and he would want us to be happy." For the first time, she allowed herself to consider a future different from the one she'd imagined, a future that might include Preston Xavier not just as an employer, but as something more. The days following Thomas's birth were a blur of exhaustion, joy, and adjustment for Beatrice. The tiny boy proved stronger than his early arrival might have suggested, nursing well and sleeping in short but predictable intervals. Preston had a cradle brought to her room, an heirloom piece he claimed had been in storage, though Beatrice suspected he'd sent to Hayes City for it. True to his word, Preston ensured they wanted for nothing. Lily was now at the ranch daily, handling household duties while Beatrice recovered and cared for Thomas. Preston himself checked on them frequently, often bringing small gifts, a rattle carved by one of the ranch hands, a soft blanket he'd found in town, books to read during long nights with the baby. A week after Thomas's birth, Beatrice was sitting in the rocking chair on the porch, enjoying the cooler evening air while the baby slept against her shoulder. Preston joined her, settling into the chair beside hers. "How is he today?" he asked, his voice soft to avoid waking the infant. "Thriving," Beatrice replied with a smile. "Doc Miller says he's gaining weight faster than expected." "Good." Preston's expression was tender as he looked at the sleeping baby. "He's a fighter like his mother." Beatrice felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. "I've been meaning to thank you, Preston, for everything you've done." He shook his head dismissively. "Anyone would have done the same." "No, they wouldn't," Beatrice insisted. "Most employers would have sent me away the moment they realized I was with child. Instead, you've shown nothing but kindness and generosity." Preston was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the ranch bathed in golden sunset light. "When Claire died," he finally said, "I thought I'd never feel anything again. I threw myself into building this ranch, working from dawn until I was too exhausted to think. For 3 years, that was enough." He turned to look at her, his eyes revealing emotions he rarely displayed. "Then you arrived, and suddenly the house felt different, warmer. I found myself looking forward to meals, to our conversations in the evening. I started to care again, Beatrice, about more than just cattle and land." Beatrice's heart quickened at his words. "Preston, I know it's too soon," he continued quickly. "Your husband, Thomas's father. His memory deserves respect. I don't expect anything from you, Beatrice. I just wanted you to know that you and Thomas have a place here for as long as you want it. Not just as employees, but as family, if you'll allow it. Family." The word hung in the air between them, full of possibility. "I don't know what to say," Beatrice admitted. Preston smiled gently. "You don't need to say anything now. Time is one thing we have plenty of out here." Thomas stirred against her shoulder, making tiny sounds that signaled he would soon wake hungry. Preston stood, understanding the baby's needs without being told. "I'll leave you to tend to him," he said. "But Beatrice, think about what I've said." After he left, Beatrice fed Thomas, her mind whirling with Preston's words. He hadn't declared love or proposed marriage, but he'd offered something perhaps more precious: a future, security, family. She thought of Thomas's father, the man she'd loved and lost too soon. Would he want her to spend her life alone, or would he want her to find happiness again? In her heart, she knew the answer. August melted into September, and Thomas grew stronger daily. Beatrice gradually resumed some of her duties around the house, though Preston insisted she focus primarily on the baby. Their evening conversations continued, sometimes with Thomas sleeping in Preston's arms, a sight that never failed to warm Beatrice's heart. One evening in late September, as the first hints of autumn crispness touched the air, Preston invited Beatrice to walk with him after dinner. "Thomas is asleep," she said hesitantly. "I shouldn't go far." "Lily will listen for him," Preston assured her. "I won't keep you long." Curious, Beatrice agreed. They walked slowly away from the house toward a small rise that offered a view of the entire ranch. The setting sun painted the landscape in shades of gold and crimson, the beauty of it stealing Beatrice's breath. "I came west 10 years ago with nothing but dreams and determination," Preston said as they gazed out over his land. "Built this place acre by acre, cow by cow. I thought it was everything I wanted." "It's impressive," Beatrice agreed. "You should be proud." "I was, but then Claire died and none of it seemed to matter anymore." He turned to face her. "Until you came." Beatrice's heart quickened. "Preston, let me finish, please." He took her hands in his. "These past months, watching you make a home here, seeing your strength and grace. I've come to care for you, Beatrice, more than I thought possible after Claire." Emotion tightened Beatrice's throat. "I care for you too." Hope flickered in his eyes. "I know Thomas's father will always hold a place in your heart. I would never ask you to forget him, but I'm hoping there might be room for me too in time." "There already is," Beatrice admitted softly. "I struggled with guilt at first, feeling something for you when I should be mourning Thomas. But I think you would want me to find happiness again, to give our son a good life." Preston nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I'm not proposing marriage, not yet. That would be too soon for both of us. But I am asking if you'll consider a future where we might become more than employer and housekeeper. More than friends." Beatrice thought of the past months of Preston's quiet support, his gentle care for her son, the comfort of his presence. She thought of long evenings by the fire, of the way her heart lightened when he smiled, of the sense of belonging she'd found at the Xavier ranch. "I'd like that very much," she said. The joy that spread across Preston's face was like sunrise after a long night. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her lips. It was brief and chaste, but it held promise of deeper feelings to come. When they returned to the house, Thomas was still sleeping peacefully. Preston bid Beatrice good night at her door, his eyes soft with newfound hope. "Sleep well," he said. "You too, Preston." Alone in her room, Beatrice looked down at her sleeping son. "Your father sent us here," she whispered. "I believe that now he guided us to someone who could love us both." The following months brought a gradual deepening of Beatrice and Preston's relationship. They moved slowly, both aware of the shadows of their pasts and the importance of building a solid foundation. Preston began including Beatrice in ranch decisions, teaching her about the business aspects of cattle raising. She, in turn, transformed the house into a true home, filling it with warmth and life. Thomas thrived under their combined care. Though Preston never tried to replace the boy's father, he became a steady, loving presence in the child's life. By the time Thomas spoke his first word, "Mama," followed quickly by a distinct "prees" that made the rancher's eyes suspiciously bright. It was clear they had become a family in all but name. Winter arrived with howling winds and occasional snowstorms that isolated the ranch for days at a time. During one such storm, with Thomas fast asleep after an evening of crawling everywhere his mother and Preston tried to prevent, Preston built a roaring fire in the main room and invited Beatrice to join him. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small package wrapped in brown paper. Beatrice unwrapped it carefully to find a small velvet box. Her breath caught as she opened it, revealing a delicate gold ring with a single pearl. "It was my mother's," Preston explained. "Not as grand as some, but she always said the pearl represented wisdom and purity of heart." Beatrice looked up at him, her eyes shining. "It's beautiful." Preston took her hands in his. "Beatrice Whitaker, this past year has brought changes I never expected. You came into my life when I thought my heart was closed forever. You brought light back into this house and purpose back into my days." He took a deep breath. "I love you, Beatrice. I love the strength that brought you across the country alone to build a new life. I love the tenderness you show Thomas, the grace with which you face each day. I love the woman you are and the woman you're becoming." Tears spilled down Beatrice's cheeks as she listened to words she'd never thought to hear again. "I love Thomas as if he were my own," Preston continued. "I want to be a father to him in every way that matters. And I want to build a life with you, a full, joyous life filled with love and perhaps more children, if you'd want that." He slid from the chair to one knee before her. "Will you marry me, Beatrice? Will you make this house truly our home?" For a moment, Beatrice thought of Thomas's father, of the life they'd planned, the future cut short. But she knew with certainty that he would want this for her, for their son. A chance at happiness, at family, at love. "Yes," she whispered, then more strongly, "Yes, Preston, I will marry you." His face lit with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then gathered her into his arms for a kiss that spoke of promises and passion, and a future bright with possibility. Their wedding took place in early spring, when the plains were beginning to green and wildflowers dotted the landscape. It was a small ceremony at the ranch, attended by the ranch hands, a few townspeople from Hays City who'd become friends, and Doc Miller, who'd seen their relationship blossom from the beginning. Thomas, now nearly 9 months old and attempting his first wobbly steps, was the center of attention, dressed in a tiny suit that matched Preston's. Beatrice wore a simple cream-colored dress with the pearl ring that now served as her engagement band. A new gold wedding band joined it during the ceremony. "I never expected to find love again," Beatrice said in her vows, her voice clear and strong. "But you showed me that the heart has room for new joy even after great loss. You've given Thomas and me a home, security, and love beyond measure. I promise to be your partner, your comfort, and your joy for all our days." Preston's eyes were suspiciously bright as he responded. "You came to my door seeking a position and instead brought me back to life. You've shown me what it means to build a true home, not just a house. I promise to cherish you and Thomas, to protect you with everything I have, and to wake each day grateful for the family we've become." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Preston kissed Beatrice with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Thomas, secure in Hank's arms, clapped his hands as if understanding the significance of the moment. The celebration afterward was joyful but simple, a feast prepared by Beatrice with Lily's help. Music from a fiddle played by one of the ranch hands, and plenty of laughter and good wishes. As evening fell, Preston found Beatrice standing on the porch, looking out at the land that was now truly her home. "Happy?" he asked, slipping an arm around her waist. She leaned into him, content in a way she'd never thought possible after losing Thomas's father. "Completely." "I have a surprise for you," Preston said. "I've been saving it for today." He led her back inside to his office, now their office, and unlocked a drawer in his desk. From it, he withdrew a document and handed it to her. Beatrice read it, her eyes widening. "You're giving Thomas half the ranch." Preston nodded. "It will be his legacy, along with any other children we might have. I've had the papers drawn up for months, waiting for the right time." Beatrice was overwhelmed by the gesture. "Preston, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll help me teach him to love this land as I do, as you've come to do." "I will," she promised. "Every day of his life." Later that night, with Thomas sleeping peacefully in the nursery Preston had built adjoining their bedroom, Beatrice lay in her husband's arms, marveling at the journey that had brought her here. "When I answered your advertisement," she murmured, "I was desperate and afraid. All I wanted was a safe place for my child." Preston pulled her closer. "And now I have everything I never dared hope for, a home, a family, love." "As do I," Preston said, kissing her softly. "As do I." 5 years later, the Xavier Ranch had prospered and grown. Preston's innovative ranching methods had brought success beyond his expectations, allowing for expansions and improvements throughout the property. But more important than the business success was the family that had blossomed within the ranch house. Thomas, now nearly 6, was a sturdy, bright boy with his mother's thoughtful nature and a love for the ranch that matched Preston's own. He followed his adoptive father everywhere, soaking up knowledge about cattle, horses, and the land with an enthusiasm that delighted both his parents. He'd been joined by 2 siblings, Josephine, a 3-year-old with Preston's eyes and a determined spirit, and Daniel, just learning to crawl with a shock of dark hair and a sunny disposition. The house had expanded along with the family, new rooms added, the garden enlarged, a schoolroom created for the children's education. Beatrice no longer served as housekeeper, though she still oversaw the household with capable hands. Several employees now helped manage the domestic side of ranch life. allowing Beatrice to divide her time between her children and assisting Preston with the business aspects of ranching, where she discovered an unexpected talent. On a warm summer evening, much like the one when she'd first arrived at the ranch, Beatrice sat on the porch watching Thomas help Preston with a young foal in the nearby corral. Josephine played at her feet while baby Daniel slept in her arms. "Mama, look," Thomas called excitedly as the foal nuzzled his outstretched hand. "She likes me, gentle hands, just like Pa showed you," Beatrice called back, smiling at the pride on Preston's face as he watched the boy. Preston caught her eye across the distance and smiled that special smile he reserved just for her, full of love and shared memories. In that moment, Beatrice felt a contentment so deep it brought tears to her eyes. When she'd arrived at the Xavier Ranch 6 years earlier, pregnant and desperate, she could never have imagined the life awaiting her. A life rebuilt from grief and uncertainty into joy and purpose. A life shared with a man who had healed her heart as she had healed his. Preston and Thomas finished with the foal and walked toward the house, hand in hand, the man who had chosen to be a father and the boy who adored him. Josephine ran to meet them, squealing with delight when Preston swung her up onto his shoulders. "Seems like we've got ourselves a future horsewoman," Preston said as they reached the porch. He settled beside Beatrice, taking Daniel from her arms to allow her to stretch. "Like father, like daughter," Beatrice replied with a smile. "And how are you this evening, Mrs. Xavier?" Preston asked, his free arms sliding around her shoulders. Beatrice leaned into him, watching Thomas demonstrate to his sister what he'd learned about the foal. "I'm thinking about how fortunate I am," she answered honestly. "How blessed we all are." Preston's arm tightened around her. "I think about that every day. How one advertisement for a housekeeper brought me the greatest treasure of my life. And how desperation drove me to the one place where I'd find not just safety but love." Thomas looked up at them, his young face serious. "Pa, can we show Mama the surprise now?" Preston laughed. "I suppose we've waited long enough. Go fetch it from the barn, son." As Thomas raced off, Beatrice raised an eyebrow. "Another surprise, a small one," Preston assured her. "The boy's been bursting to show you all day." Thomas returned moments later, carrying something wrapped in a cloth. With solemn ceremony, he presented it to Beatrice. "Pa helped me make it," he explained as she unwrapped a beautifully crafted wooden box. "Open it." Inside, Beatrice found a collection of treasures: a pressed wildflower from the first bouquet Preston had given her, the announcement of their wedding from the Hayes City newspaper, tiny locks of hair from each child tied with ribbons, and a small leather-bound journal. "What's this?" she asked, opening the journal to find Preston's handwriting. "I've been keeping it since the day you arrived," Preston explained, a hint of color touching his cheeks. "Just thoughts, things I wanted to remember." Beatrice read the first entry, dated the day she'd stepped off the stage coach. "A woman arrived today to take the housekeeper position. She carries herself with dignity despite being obviously with child and alone in the world. There is strength in her eyes that speaks of someone who refuses to be defeated by life's hardships. The house already feels different with her in it, less empty. I find myself wondering about her story and hoping she might stay longer than the others." Tears filled Beatrice's eyes as she looked up at her husband. "Preston, keep reading," he urged. "Skip to the last page." Beatrice turned to the final entry, dated that very day. 6 years since Beatrice came into my life. 6 years of building something I never thought I'd have again: a family, a home filled with love, a future bright with promise. Thomas asked me today what makes a family. I told him it's love, choice, and commitment, not just blood. He nodded as if he'd known this all along. Looking at Beatrice with our children, I am reminded daily of how close I came to missing this life. If she hadn't been brave enough to travel west alone, if I hadn't placed that advertisement, if we hadn't both been willing to open our hearts again after loss, how different our paths might have been. Instead, the pregnant woman who arrived as my housekeeper became my reason for living, my partner in all things, the mother of our growing family, and the love that restored my faith in life itself. Every day, I give thanks for her courage, her strength, and her heart. Every day, I strive to be worthy of the gift she has given me, a second chance at joy. Beatrice closed the journal, too moved to speak. Around them, their children played in the golden light of the setting sun, their laughter a testament to the life she and Preston had built together. "I love you, Beatrice Xavier," Preston said softly. "Yesterday, today, and all our tomorrows." Beatrice leaned against the man who had become her strength, her partner, and her love. "And I love you, for giving Thomas and me a home when we needed it most, for seeing value in me when I felt worthless, for building this beautiful life with me, step by step." As darkness fell over the Xavier ranch, Preston gathered their sleepy children and led his family inside. The house welcomed them with warmth and light, no longer just a dwelling, but the heart of the life they'd created together. For Beatrice, who had once been a desperate widow seeking only survival, and for Preston, who had been a lonely rancher existing rather than living, their unexpected union had brought healing neither had thought possible. They had found in each other not just love, but renewal, purpose, and the profound joy that comes from building a family bound by choice as much as circumstance. And as they settled their children for the night, moving in the harmonious rhythm of parents who know each other's thoughts without words, both silently gave thanks for the twist of fate that had brought a pregnant housekeeper to a solitary cowboy's door, changing both their lives forever.